welcome to another episode of the Tip Balls Podcast. I am your host, Sam Randazzo. And I am joined today by my two semi-pink co-hosts. To my right, it is the one and only Uncle Sam.
Hello.
And to my left, it's none other than our very own Mr. Zolo, Mike Palazzolo.
I heard that half-hearted blessed you gave last week in my place during the interview.
He did. He came through with you. He came through with the blessed.
I don't know how I feel about it. I don't know if you were making fun of me or if you were trying to fill my shoes, but I appreciated it nonetheless.
Well, Zolo, how are you today?
Good. How are you?
Not too shabby. Not too bad. Uncle Sam, how are you doing today?
Great.
High points, low points, pits and peaks of your weekend, as it is a Monday. Let's hear them.
The high point was leaving work.
When, today or
The
Saturday?
low point was seeing Bruce.
So,
That would be great if you could talk into your mic.
can I ask you a question? So you have to see Bruce not only to begin your day now, but then when on days
Out
where
to
we
fucking end
record.
my day?
Yeah, you have
it's
to.
gonna
Yeah.
make me.
You barely saw me today.
If I, that's because I was outside working
Exactly.
the whole fucking day.
Yeah, but isn't that a good thing? Like, isn't the fact
Yeah,
that
it's
you
good.
just spend the day outside
You know what?
a
That,
good thing?
that helped me from getting angry today.
Did it?
Yeah, it's like
You became one with
therapeutic.
nature.
When you're sanding wood, it's therapeutic.
Is the tent city still next to the fence over there?
No.
Okay.
No, that's been gone.
The tent city
But
got removed.
My boy, shout out to John Kelly with his Martian head. He got rid of the tent dweller.
Is John Kelly a Dearborn Heights cop?
Yes.
Okay. Shout out to the DHPD. Zolo, how was your weekend? It's a Monday. High points, low points, pits, peaks.
It was quiet.
Yep.
Nothing crazy. My high point was listening to you guys interview Jason Kabinda. They did a great job.
Yeah, and if you haven't seen that yet, you should definitely go check it out. It's under the videos tab on our YouTube channel.
You guys did a very good job. Shout out to Jason. He was a great guest.
Great guest.
I wish
Top-
he was still
top
a
tier.
Lion. Low point, I don't know. I kind of just lounged this weekend. I watched the wrestling was in. They did a pay-per-view in France this weekend, in Lyon, France,
Huh.
and it was their first ever like premium live event in France. Like they're starting to go really international with the pay-per-views, and the crowd was one of the hottest crowds I've ever seen in my life. And in terms of wrestling, I don't mean like the people look good. I mean like the crowd was just in sync and loud, and the chanting was crazy, and it made the wrestling event very fun. Watched that Saturday. And that's it. Just watch some hockey and basketball. I'm a Knicks fan at the moment when the Pistons are bad, so the Knicks are playing tonight. Excited about that.
Are they going to win?
They should. But Knicks Pacers, do you know the history of Knicks Pacers?
No. I do.
You probably do.
Yes.
In the 90s, Knicks Pacers was like one of the premier rivalries in the NBA. Like one of the first batch
Reggie
of
Miller,
30
baby.
Just gonna say the first batch of 30 for 30s that they ever made. The best one I thought was called Winning Time, Reggie Miller versus the New York Knicks. And in like I think they played each other 3 out of 4 years, but in back-to-back years in particular, like the Knicks took one and then the Pacers took one. And it was just unreal. And they've played each other a few times since then. I think they played 4 or 5 years ago in the playoffs. But this Pacers team is good. This Knicks team is fun. And I fucking love watching the Knicks fans are feral. Like they're not well humans. And it'd be like if the Knicks win a title ever, it'd be the equivalent of the Lions winning, Knicks winning. If the Maple Leafs ever won somehow. And then the baseball version would have been the Cubs. At this point, it's the Tigers. The Tigers are one of the longest droughts.
We haven't done a tip meets in a while. Did you cook anything good over the weekend, or
No.
you didn't cook shit?
No.
Were you just starved?
No, I didn't cook.
Nothing. So, did you cook anything?
I did a little meat on Friday.
Ooh.
Did those spinella steaks, the ribeye caps from Costco, the USDA primes.
Best. Absolute best.
I love those. Make 2 of them. I cut them up in like tips almost. Shout out to Tip Balls. And yeah, cook them nice and rare. And they slap every time. You don't need a lot of them
to do the job.
get the gist. Yeah.
So, I got a new Blackstone.
Why?
Because mine, the hose didn't connect.
Talking when you melted it?
I melted part of it, and then the hose that connected the
The gas.
to the propane tank fucked. It was rusted to shit. All the paint was peeling off. It was becoming a hazard. Okay. So,
Go get the real one now.
well, the culinary edition was on sale with the omnivore top through Lowe's.
Okay.
All
I
right.
didn't know Lowe's had them.
Well, see, Lowe's has an exclusive deal with Blackstone. They're the only ones that do the new omnivore top.
Oh, you could have went and got a char griller at
No.
Menards a lot cheaper.
I'm faithful to Blackstone.
Okay.
It was on sale.
Right.
Okay. I did turkey burgers the other day. Okay.
Ooh.
No. You're going to say that. Diced up a few jalapenos, put it right into the meat. Diced up some zucchini to keep it nice and moist. Packed it into the burger. Did some burgers. This thing got so hot. It cooked these perfectly. 6 minutes, done. And they were half pounders. They were half-pound turkey burgers. Fantastic. Melted the cheese. Did a little tin cap on top. Melted it real nice. It was a delicious meal.
If you got that top, you could just close it.
That's what I did.
Do that.
Yep, just shut it right down.
Yeah.
But this gave it a little extra. I shut it with the thing on there. You know what I'm saying? It was like double sealed. Keep the moisture in. Fantastic. It was absolutely delicious. Bruce, how have you been? What's going on?
Nothing crazy. Living life.
Just living the dream. So we're going to continue on with our off-season recaps today. We got the AFC South on deck. Very interesting division there. Obviously, last year it was Jacksonville's division to lose, and they somehow did lose it. Tennessee was kind of in disarray. Whole new staff there. Houston's rising up. Indy has some question marks, but things are looking up for them as well. And we're going to get into that in a second because I'm not going to pass up on the opportunity to talk about Tom Brady news. And I just have to say, last night was the Netflix Live official roast of the GOAT, Tom Brady. And it was fantastic. It was truly one of the most entertaining things I've watched in a long time. Drew Bledsoe was there. Peyton Manning was there. Bill Belichick, Edelman, Gronk, all the usual suspects. Randy Moss was there, and whoever said he was dressed like a substitute teacher hit it right on the head. My dude just 1,000% completely.
I think.
Huh?
I think it was Kevin Hart.
Kevin Hart. Kevin Hart was fantastic too, I must say. If you have not watched it yet and you need 3 hours of your life wasted just to laugh your ass off, 1,000% go
How
do it.
much is Kevin Hart in it?
Kevin Hart hosted it.
He's the host.
Dude,
Kevin Hart's
you know
hilarious.
So
you don't think
worth
Kevin
it.
Hart's funny?
Say what you
He's fucking awful.
say what you want.
funny.
He was fucking hilarious. Nikki Glazer,
She
out
always
of the
kills
park.
it.
She
always
killed
kills
it.
And Jeff Ross always kills it
Yes.
too. He was great.
Jeff Ross is awesome, dude.
Yeah, he's
There,
good.
there was a guy that used to do the roast. I can't remember what his fucking name was, but this guy was just utterly vicious. He wound up passing away maybe about 5 or 6 years ago. But the guy was outstanding. So if you go back and watch this, I can't remember his name. He had dark hair. The guy was fucking hilarious.
I've got to say, Gronk was totally fucking pickled, like absolutely destroyed. He was fucking funny, but honest to God, Edelman, if he ever wanted to go into a career in comedy, I feel like he could do it. He was
Listen.
fucking funny.
Listen, their jokes were all written for them. You got to keep that in mind too. Their jokes are all scripted.
He
but
sold it so good.
Edelman, I think, was the best out of like
100 out of the football players.
He was pretty good. I thought Belichick was decent. I thought, it was people booed Kim Kardashian. I thought her toast was hilarious.
It was funny. It was.
Bob Kraft was pretty funny, and I can't stand Robert Kraft. There are a lot of high points. It's definitely worth the watch, and it was Who's the podcaster that came out?
Oh my God.
I can't remember his name.
Bruce, do you know his name? The guy who does is the #1 podcast in the world right now. And he came out and he just like
He
went
got
on
everyone all in one
Yes.
clip. Like
He
he goes in a
burned
row
everybody.
and fucked everyone up.
What's his
He was
name?
so
Tony.
good. Yeah, Tony something. Tony. I know what it
The
is.
guy with the mustache.
Starts with an H.
No.
Starts with an H.
Hold on. Tony Hinchcliffe.
Tony Hinchcliffe.
Fucking hilarious. Truly. I don't think one person bombed. Honestly, to me, Randy Moss was the least funny. Ben Affleck kind of sucked, in my opinion.
I didn't think the Ron Burgundy thing was funny, and I loved Anchorman.
The Ron Burgundy thing was really, really try hard, I feel like. And the other thing was, that was the first time in 20 years of watching Belichick in every way, shape, and form where he looked genuinely like he was going to shit his pants. He looked like that for some reason. The dude's been on the biggest stages known to man, and that got to him.
Because that's different. He looked weird. If you go back
When
and
you
watch
don't have to talk in front of people and you can give one word fucking answers.
yeah, it's a
That's
different
one
person.
Thing, it's a different thing. When
It's
you got
different
the lights
person.
on you and
He was looking
you're
for
trying
Robert.
to be funny.
Go back and watch his work with Pat McAfee during the draft. He looked completely different. He was good, but he seems like a different person.
Yeah,
when,
100%.
you know, it's not. This isn't work for him.
Right.
He could be himself, and he was never like no one in the core group. Like he never had any real beef with Tom Brady ever. He never had any actual issues with him. So no one in that core group dislikes him. They like having him around, and they've been around him for years. So there's like a natural kinship there, and those are his friends. So he could be himself, like he could be Bill Belichick, and they could joke about him walking out of the girl's apartment at 6.
That was fucking
They could
funny.
joke about that, and it's cool. you know?
The one thing, shout out to Bob Rader in the chat, big friend of the show, longtime friend of the show. I do agree that Bert and Segura, they kind of missed. I didn't think that one was all that funny.
No.
Somehow they did formulate a way to put Brady and Hitler in a picture together and show it.
Yeah,
But-
that was funny.
I didn't see. I did that one wasn't that funny to me. And the other thing I wanted to say, Kevin Hart, when he got Robert Kraft on stage with Bill Belichick to cheers and do a shot, that showed me everything I needed to know about how the breakup was amicable. Bullshit. Robert Kraft fired Belichick. That was the last thing on earth Belichick wanted to do, was sit there and have a toast with the guy who just fired him. And that showed right through all of that. 1,000% to me. That was an iconic moment that Bill Belichick wanted absolutely nothing to do with, in my opinion. But outside of that, it was a great watch, and I 1,000% recommend, because it did make me laugh my ass off.
You should watch it, Uncle Sam. Go back and watch it. It's
Brady-
worth it. You just throw it on the
I
back.
seen when what's her name, Nikki Glazer, was smashing Gronkowski about being stupid.
Oh, yeah. Everybody.
Everyone, he got laid into probably harder than Tom Brady, and it was all the same. It was just everyone calling him stupid the entire time.
And then Brady came on at the end, and he actually had a couple good ones. He roasted Kevin Hart and said that too bad Netflix didn't ante up to get Dave Chappelle there.
Yeah, it was good.
Yeah.
They're right.
I thought Peyton Manning was also really,
Peyton Manning was fucking.
but he's always good.
too.
He's good at that
Manning's,
stuff.
Got a good sense of humor. Him and his brother do. They're both funny. They're both
Yeah,
good.
I wish Eli
Especially
would have
when
been
they're
there.
together.
That would have been good if Eli were there, because Eli's also like
Get the
good at the
Von
dry
Brady
humor.
Eli.
Oh yeah, and Eli would have just. I mean, Eli had all the ammo in the world.
Yeah.
You know what? I genuinely thought he was going to come out, and when they brought Peyton, they had to have a Manning out there. But, anyways, let's go into the AFC South. You want to start off with Houston? Houston was the talk of the town in the AFC South last year, so I feel like that is probably the best place to start. First and foremost, did you guys both see the new logo for the Houston Texans? The H. Their owner.
No, I haven't seen it.
Their owner actually came out and debuted it in a great Instagram picture with his dog with the H on the hat.
Cal McNair.
Yeah. It's actually a really fucking cool logo. So they debuted that. They debuted new jerseys as well. But in some staff moves, they were able to maintain offensive coordinator Bobby Slowick. That, to me, is an absolutely huge move, because I think he had a big part of all of CJ Stroud's immediate success coming into the league next year. Zolo, how important was it for them to hold on to him?
So Slowick was a finalist. It just seemed like the Commanders, Redskins, whatever you want to call them, they tried to paint like they had this really good offseason, and they tried to paint this narrative. And I just remember watching the Knicks eliminate Josh Harris's 76ers the other night, and I'm like, their offseason wasn't that good, because they wanted Ben Johnson, they missed. After Ben Johnson, they wanted Bobby Slowick. And Bobby Slowick, same move. He wanted to stay with the up-and-coming team to see what they're capable of this year. And this was a good coup for Houston, because I do think Slowick, he's going to get a job eventually. But yeah, this is, I mean, you said it well. It's that's a good get for them, just keeping him and having that continuity for the rookie quarterback, now sophomore quarterback. And they've added pieces. We'll get to what they've added, but it makes a lot more sense now.
Obviously, Uncle Sam, you're a huge fan of D'Amico Ryans. And you're also a noted fan of Joe Mixon, who they traded for this offseason. They gave a 7th-round pick to Cincinnati for Mixon. The Texans have kind of been a team that have been unable to run the ball for like the past few years in recent memory.
I think they did. I think they did well this past year with Singletary toward the end of the year. Actually had a decent back end this year.
Mixon's obviously a massive upgrade for them.
Yeah.
How much of an impact do you think he'll have off the rip in that offense?
Oh, he will. He'll be effective right away.
Big, and it only helps Stroud. It only advances Stroud's case for whatever we're gonna anoint Stroud with this year. It only furthers that because
What I like is
run
they
game.
evaluated what they had, and I don't think there's been a team in the offseason that has kind of jumped in and right now they're all in.
Well,
They're all in.
Can I explain it real
Draft
quick?
and everything.
That's 100% correct. And let me explain it. This is the formula. This is the Brock Purdy formula. This is the Mahomes formula. Who I'm missing name. Jalen Hurts. This is the formula.
Rookie deal.
When you have a quarterback on a rookie deal, which is the highest paid position in sports, is NFL quarterback. When you have a quarterback on a rookie deal, you take
That's
advantage
not
of
who
it.
LeBron James is.
Barely. It's by 5 or 6 million. And I don't want to give that guy any fucking credit. Anyways, when you have the quarterback on the rookie deal, you sink the resources into the team because they have a window for another it's 3 years now. Their window's huge. They have a 3-year window to where they can do a lot of damage and make it make sense. And you have the luxury of being aggressive and paying other positions. And you have to strike while the iron's hot. And the Lions are doing this in a similar way, just with different positions. They don't have the quarterback on the rookie deal because Goff is already getting paid a ton of money. But this is what you do when you have everything going for you.
Well, I was going to say the one position that they really didn't need to do much at was wide receiver. Obviously, Nico Collins last year put himself on the map in a big way. Tank Dell, even though he got hurt, was huge for them, as was Noah Brown down the stretch. And then they had some sneaky guys like John Mechie, Robert Woods there, and they went out and traded for Stephon Diggs. So exactly what you said, they were able to spend that money on guys like Diggs and Mixon that other teams are spending to pay a quarterback. They ended up sending a 2nd rounder, a 6th, and a 2025 5th to the Bills in exchange for Diggs. So, I mean, that in itself, their wide receiver core is absolutely terrifying to look at on paper. On the other side of the ball, they signed Danielle Hunter, 2 years, $49 million. Danico Autry, Azeez El Shire away from Tennessee. Miles Bryant, cornerback Mike Ford, cornerback C.J. Henderson, Mario Edwards, and then upgraded at punter and got Tommy Townsend as well. They also got our old boy Jeff Okudah. What does that mean for them going after all of these guys on the defensive side of the ball? I mean, Azeez El Shire has been he was a huge playmaker for Tennessee over the last few years. Danielle Hunter, I mean, obviously, there's not enough good things you could say about him, even at this point in his career. I think personally,
they have, like he said, they have all this. They have this cap money that they have, and they're not fucking being shy. They're spending everything they have. They're in win now mode, and the rest of the league better fucking open up their eyes, because this was a dangerous team last year. And they've just gotten a lot better defensively and offensively. So they're no joke. They're no joke. They're a serious contender.
Zolo, tell us about some of these DBs, because there's 1, 2, 3, 4 cornerbacks that they picked up through free agency.
If you can make the case for one hole they had on defense last year, it's the corner opposite Derek Stingley, which, by the way, I think Derek Stingley is one of the top 5 cornerbacks in the NFL at the moment.
I really can't disagree with you there.
It's on the opposite. They did it in the draft too. We'll get to that. But I think they had a little bit of issues at safety, and they had a little bit of issues at CB2, nickel corner.
They need nickel corner bad.
Nickel corner will be helpful because their front seven's outstanding. It's one of the best in football.
I think their back end is really nice too. I like their back end. I like Cisco. I like not Cisco. What's his name?
Petrie,
Petrie, and who's the other one they have?
Jimmy Ward.
Yeah.
So on the back end, I wanna
Okuda's
get
their
to
number
draft.
2 corner right now.
What?
Okuda is number 2 on their depth chart at corner, but as what Zolo's going to say, they traded out of the first round, but with their first pick in the draft, second round pick 42, they got I'm going to butcher
Mari
his name,
Lassiter.
so have at it.
So
Lassiter?
Lassiter was the better cornerback on last year's Georgia National Championship team. He was better than who's the guy that the Eagles drafted at the end of the first round, the beginning of the second round.
I can't remember now.
Yeah,
No, I know who
okay.
you're talking about.
Yeah, I know you know.
He
who I'm
was
talking
better.
about. But Kamari Lassiter is better. He fell off. He would have been a first round pick. He would have been in the back end of the first round. He fell off because they say he might have an injury, but he had a really slow 40. I think he had like a 4.5 40, and there's concerns with his speed. But there's no better place to put a corner with speed concerns than CB2 if you're not covering the other team's best and fastest receiver.
Richard Sherman ran a 4.58 or some shit like that.
Speed,
Right.
it doesn't always
Doesn't mean
matter.
anything.
It doesn't always matter. And Lassiter is tall enough. He's the prototypical corner. He's 6'2". He can play press. He can play man. And he, in that division when he's going to have to cover Pittman or he's going to have to cover the Titans would be the best example of where you're going to see Lassiter shine when you need 2 cornerbacks because they have a ton of receivers. I think it's going to be a good gig for them. And I think that's also why they signed all the corners is it's trial and errors to see, who's going to fit opposite Stingley. But I loved their offseason. I thought they had one of the better off seasons. They had a good, not great draft. And Danielle Hunter, you throw Danielle Hunter opposite every other piece on their D line, and it's just
Him and Will Anderson together.
it's just a match made in heaven.
Then you're rotating in, Autry, and they're going to be dangerous.
Yeah,
Very
I mean,
dangerous.
if you and then I'm again Foley, Fatusaki. Did I get that one right? Were we close on that one? They picked him up in free agency. Derek Barnett's there as well. Honestly, they have a fantastic Desmond King. They re-signed him, and he didn't have that great of a year last year, and they still brought him back. And I know he's moved around a bunch over the last couple of years, but still, I mean, Desmond King can still make plays in this league. Across the board right now, even at punter, they upgraded.
Yeah.
So
They're pretty solid.
Tommy Townsend was a Pro Bowl punter, and they sunk resources into him. They had before Kaimi Fairbairn got injured last year. He was like the most
the
consistent
number
kicker.
one kicker. Yeah.
I think he was fantasy number 1. And again, I think a lot of they had red zone woes last year. They were really efficient to start the year. Do you remember that? Like Stroud was automatic in the red zone to start the year. And then they had red zone issues in the back half of the season. And I think they did a lot to mitigate
Injuries
that.
had a lot to do with that.
Yeah, for sure.
Dell going down.
For sure. Even Stroud.
That was not the same.
Even
missed a
Stroud's
couple games,
injuries.
too.
Yeah.
Even Stroud's injury. But now they have a running game. You can hand the ball off to Mixon in the red zone, and that's going to do a lot of damage and go a long way.
So some things that they lost, obviously Devin Singletary, but Mixon came in to fill that hole. Blake Cashman. Now, I think they probably did enough, especially with Alshire, to
Listen, Cashman was a starter, but he's really just a special teams guy. He's not.
no faith there.
Well, I mean, it's not that. The guy plays hard. He's like Alex Anzalone. Okay? He should be,
High school football coach.
and I actually think Cashman's better than Anzalone.
And then they
My
got
opinion.
they got deals done to re-sign Dalton Schultz.
That was big.
He's gonna be a big part of that
They
offense going
drafted,
forward.
The
Yeah.
kid from Ohio State, too.
Well,
Yeah,
let's
Stouffer.
Cade Stover, who's good.
Yeah.
let's talk about that.
He's a good player. He's more of a blocking tight end, but he'll fit there for sure. And he can catch balls. He did a lot of damage.
They
at Ohio
got
State.
some depth now. They drafted. It looks like they got some.
They
nice
have
depth behind
interesting depth.
What they
They have
got.
interesting depth. It's and again, a lot of their season came down to what if we weren't banged up a little bit last year.
Right.
They could have finished 3. They might have even finished 2. They could have finished above Kansas City at least.
I think if Tank Dell hadn't have got hurt, that they would have been just
I would have won
a
fantasy.
demon to deal with. Huh?
So if Tank Dell didn't get hurt, I would have won the fantasy league.
No, I still would have beat you.
Real quick, I know you want to do the draft class right now. Is that what you're going to go to?
I was going to, yeah.
Before we do that, I want to go back to Diggs real quick.
Yeah.
I think this is so it's one and done. Diggs is not going to end up back there. They're not going to re-sign him, in my opinion. It's just big money that they don't have to sink into a receiver. I think that Diggs it's a perfect fit for him because it takes a lot of the pressure off because Nico Collins is clearly number one. Tank Dell, when healthy, is all over the field, can play at any position on the field for receiver. And Diggs just has to get open, which is when he was the number one option in Buffalo. It's kind of why he took a shit at the end of the year last year. Their offense was one-dimensional. They weren't throwing to anyone else.
Right.
Kincaid towards the end of the year. But in this offense, he just makes a lot of sense, and it lessens his load, and he's just got to stay in his lane and play,
Yeah, he needs to keep his fucking mouth shut and just play ball.
Well, that's not happening. Kid's been,
Well,
he's been
the
opening
minute the
his mouth
mouth
since he was
comes
at
out,
Maryland.
the minute he opens his mouth, he's a cancer.
And if my math is
Just shut
correct,
up.
if you want to look this up in the meantime, if my math is correct, this is the first. I think Houston and Dallas play this year, so this is the first time we might get the Diggs Bowl, which would be Stephon Diggs being covered by his brother.
They play the Cowboys in Dallas.
Yeah, so Trayvon and Stephon are going to go against each other for the first time this year, and that could be really exciting.
You want to know something? If you look, and we're going to do this obviously when we preview the season, but if you look at the Texans' schedule for this year, off the top, Ravens, Lions, Bills, Dolphins, Cowboys, Chiefs, Packers, and then they have their divisional games as well as Patriots and Vikings. But I mean,
and that's a combination of playing good divisions. So they have to play, and they have to play the Bears and the Vikings, who aren't scrubs.
yes, they do.
That's a combination of playing two good divisions this year, as well as a first place schedule. So if they're good, we'll find out. If Stroud is good, we'll find
They're
out.
good.
Yeah.
They're good.
Hopping back to their draft for a second, they had 2 second-round picks. With the second one, they went offensive line Blake Fisher out of Notre Dame.
He's depth off the rip. I think he's just a depth piece.
Okay.
Great player, though.
Kalen Bullock, safety out of USC in the 3rd round.
USC's defense was absolute trash last year.
Well, I want to say they kind of needed this because if you look at their depth chart as far as safety goes, Petrie was banged up for a good portion of last year, and Jimmy Ward was injured as well. So I feel like they just wanted to go out and get some depth at the safety position. So, I mean, is he really a huge playmaker? I don't know.
So he's a lankier guy, and USC's got this history of like lengthy safeties in the defensive backfield. They got guys that are ball hawks back there, and again, he's just backup for Petrie, and eventually he'll start, eventually he'll play, but. Again, a lot of this draft was about depth. Other than maybe Lassiter, who will have a shot to start eventually, a lot of this draft is just depth pieces, which they have the luxury of doing because they were aggressive in free agency.
6th round, they went linebacker Jamal Hill out of Oregon. Anything from anybody on that one? Special teams. Jawar Jordan, Louisville running back. Anybody see any tape on him?
There will be trial and error over the next couple of years of finding a running back too, especially as Mixon phases out. Eventually, They're going to need a running back. It's the missing link is an elite pass catching tight end that's a step over Dalton Schultz, and then the running back that's going to replace Mixon.
And then they had 3 7th rounders. I'm sure we know about Ladarius Henderson, Michigan offensive lineman.
Developmental, but a great player. He did amazing. He transferred from I can't remember where he came from, but he didn't start for Michigan until this year, and he's as good as any guard in the country that got drafted last year. But a depth piece. He's not going to start next year.
Solomon Byard, defensive end, USC, as well as Marcus Harris, defensive lineman from Auburn, in the 7th round for them. So overall, the Texans improved or not improved from last year?
100% improved. Before we get to Uncle Sam, the last thing I want to say about the Texans is on these sheets I've been making what they lost, like who each team lost.
Mm-hmm.
And I guarantee you that if we were to line up all 32 teams, that this team experienced one of the
less losses.
Yeah, the least
Lesser
amount of losses that aren't going to set them back. Like no one truly notable is gone, and it's going to go a long way, I think.
I think that jumps back to what you said. When you have money to spend to keep guys around because you have a quarterback on a rookie deal, you're not going to have as big of a loss. What do you think about the Texans offseason?
Yeah, I think they vastly improved, and I think the rest of the league better look out. They got a quarterback that's really good. They got a really good receiving core. That now they have a bell cow running back, which they haven't had, and then their defense is really turned over. You're going to have guys that are going to put on some super pressure with Danielle Hunter on one side, and I'm excited to see them play. 'Cause I truly think that they're going to be a force.
Before we move on to Jacksonville, longtime friend of the show, Dan Alhosny in the chat wants to know where the shades are today.
They're in my car.
Oh.
Don't have them with me.
Next up, we're going to jump over to Duval County and talk about the Jacksonville Jaguars. They did announce that they're bringing back their 90s throwback jerseys. That's probably the first jersey they ever had as an expansion
It's
team.
got the Jaguar running on the shoulder. This is throwback season. Between now and like July is when we're going to start to get all the alternate jerseys and throwback jerseys that are coming out for next year. And that's one of the hotly anticipated ones. And they've teased it. They've teased that jersey's coming back.
Honestly, it looks pretty cool from the teaser pics I've seen. Also, they hired a new defensive coordinator by the name of Ryan Nielsen. Anybody care to share some information on that one? Obviously, Doug Peterson's still the man in charge there, and Press Taylor is the offensive coordinator. But anybody care to share on defensive coordinator Ryan Nielsen?
Their defense cost them a lot last year. They needed to make a change. I think that was this done in season? Did they fire? What's his face in season there, or did they?
I thought it was toward the end. I thought right after they got bounced.
I think you're right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So realistically, and I think we're all kind of on the same page about Jacksonville, they should have won that division last year. You had three rookie quarterbacks: Levis, Richardson, Stroud. Tennessee was in disarray. I mean, Indy's kind of been stagnant. Nobody expected Houston to do what they were going to do. This was their Division II win and run away with. Like, I think last year we unanimously picked them to win, and there was no question about it. And obviously last year was a disappointment. So what they did is they traded a 6th-round pick to the Patriots to bring in Mac Jones.
He was noticeably absent last night from the Tom Brady roast.
Kevin Hart did get a good one in.
I don't understand that part. I guess you need somebody to back up Lawrence. So yeah.
I mean, you had C.J. Beathard.
Yeah.
Honest to God.
I don't know. I would say Beathard's better than him, but
I'm saying.
you know what? You can't judge Mac Jones on what you've seen out of New England the last 2 years because they've been dog shit.
I mean, I think Mac Jones.
They've been dog shit. They were doing it with smoke and mirrors.
Mac Jones is dog shit.
Side note on Mac Jones.
I don't know
He's from there. He's from Jacksonville, so that kind of
Hometown boy.
He was a Jags fan growing up, so that's part of the lure for him.
Okay.
They also kept a huge piece on defense. Tagged and extended a linebacker, Josh Allen. 5 years, $141 million.
I think that's top DN money too. I think he set the bar. And it may have been passed since then, but I think he has the highest contract for a DN.
Do we think that's deserving?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a good player. I mean, it'll be a bargain in a couple years.
Other than that, another linebacker news. Foycetti Alcoon has led the league in tackles like every year for like the past 3 years or some shit. Just an absolute tackling machine. 3 years, $30 million for him to keep him.
That's a fucking deal right there. $10 million a year.
Linebackers don't get paid anymore. There's just not a premium on the position.
Yeah.
Especially off-ball linebackers. But we're all in a fantasy league that requires defensive players, and he's the top defensive player every year because
Madman.
12 tackles a game goes a long way, and that's
Yeah.
says a lot about him. High motor.
They also signed defensive end Eric Armstead, 3 years, $43.5 million.
Oh, you know why he left Frisco?
Wow. Now, with him on one end of the ball, Josh Allen on the other end of the ball, do we like that?
Absolutely.
I think that that's going to be some much needed help up front for them, because realistically, you've got Alcoon, Trayvon Walker, maybe. We still don't know about him yet. I feel like
listen, he's a solid player. There's no fucking question if this guy is not a solid player. He's solid. All them kids from Georgia are solid players defensively.
let's talk about wide receivers. Their big offseason signing, Gabe Davis, 3 years, $39 million, and they lost Calvin Ridley.
I missed one too on the recap because it just happened last week, but Zay Jones is no longer there too.
Zay Jones gone.
That's taking the spot of the big receiver, Zay Jones.
And then I think he signed somewhere already too.
Let's double check that. But in the meantime,
And they signed Darnell Savage.
Well-
that's huge because they lost Jenkins.
sticking with the receivers for a minute. I know Gabe Davis, yeah, he is what he is. He always was in the shadows kind of in Buffalo, but he had some really, really big games. Ridley really fizzled out there towards the end of last year, and his usage was
I don't think,
absolute
I think
zero.
it was more usage than anything else. I don't know what happened. Maybe something internally happened that we don't know about, but the guy is very talented, and for you not to use him, it just doesn't make any fucking sense whatsoever.
What are your thoughts on Ridley leaving?
I think they were close to re-signing him, if I remember correctly, and then they just got outbid by the Titans. To me, I love what they did in the draft at receiver and Brian Thomas, but to me their receiving core is clearly worse than it was last year. And it was already an issue last year with injuries and inconsistencies. And it's just weird because I think Doug Peterson's a great coach, and I think he is pretty organized. Like, I thought he had that Eagles team humming back in 2000, whatever it was, 18. And weirdly enough, I don't think they did enough this offseason. I just don't. And I don't know. This new receiving core, throw in Zay Jones, throw in Gabe Davis, throw in Brian Thomas. It's just not, I don't think it's going to be enough. And they needed to do more to help Trevor Lawrence this year, and I don't think they did that. So I'm curious to see where this franchise goes, because this is a turning point for them. And they're kind of in a hole, and they didn't do enough to get themselves out of the hole, especially compared to what went on in the division this offseason. You know, the Titans got better, in my opinion. The Colts are going to get better because Anthony Richardson's coming back, and they kind of had a good little offseason themselves. You know, what did Jacksonville do? I just see a lot of losses and then some spare parts added defensively.
As far as losses go, like we said, Ridley, Rayshon Jenkins, and Darius Williams, losses for them. Let's talk about what they gained outside of the bigger names we've already talked about. Mitch Morse, center, depth guy. Kicker, Joey Sly.
Be a starter.
Mitch Morse. It looks, honest to God, their offensive line is really interesting because they made a big splash last offseason when they with Cam Robinson. But Ezra Cleveland, Mitch Morse as starters for them. Do we think that they did enough through the draft to solid up that offensive line? They didn't take an offensive lineman until the 4th round. Other than that, the other two guys they picked up, Joey Sly and Ronald Darby, a kicker and a corner who is average at best, I would say.
Well, they drafted a corner with their 3rd round pick, kid from Florida State.
Let's talk about their draft then. Brian Thomas, obviously we all love that pick with the 1st, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a monster.
Their 2nd pick, Mason Smith, defensive tackle out of LSU.
He's kind of a project. The guy's fucking huge. He's Jordan Davis but doesn't have the tape to go with it. That's the problem.
They passed on some really good players in the second round to take him. And you can make the case that Mason Smith was the third best defensive lineman from LSU in this draft. So
And they drafted another one from.
they did.
They did. Jefferson was actually pretty solid in the rotation there.
So, yeah, their third round pick, Jarian Jones, defensive back out of Florida State.
Javon Foster could end up starting for them at some point.
Javon Foster at the moment is second on the depth chart at his position. But like I said, they really don't have all that much meat there on their offensive line right now. So, yeah, I wouldn't be shocked to see that. And then, like you just said, the other defensive tackle from LSU, Jordan Jefferson, in the fourth round as well. Other than that, DeAndre Prince, corner out of Ole Miss. Killian Robinson, running back out of Texas, going behind Etienne, Bigsby, and Dearness Johnson. Then they decided to go kicker. Cam Little, kicker from Arkansas.
Cam Little was good. He was there was 4 good kickers in this draft that I think could turn into something. Kickers are head cases, so you can't really look at a college tape and say, oh, that guy's going to be good, but you could look at consistency and hope it translates. Cam Little, Harrison Mevis from Missouri, Josh Carty from Stanford, Will Reichard from Alabama. Little had a big year last year, so that's a good get. And he'll put, who'd they sign? Joey Sly?
Joey Sly, yep.
Yeah, it wouldn't shock me
Have
if
a
Little
little
ends up winning the
competition.
job.
That's good to have competition.
Always good.
And then with their seventh round pick, linebacker out of Texas Tech, Miles Cole. The one person that I missed on here that I wanted to talk about, Devin Duvernay. They also picked up in free agency, wide receiver. You know what, though? They love these little gadget guys like that. Duvernay is, yes, a kick returner at his
Basically,
core.
he's the same thing as Christian Kirk.
I
They're
think
the same
Kirk's
type of player.
I think Kirk's a little bit better than him. But, I mean, you have to remember, Jamal Agnew had some big games for them at wide receiver. Zay Jones, like those kind of oddball return guys, they usually end up having some big games. And I would kind of expect Duvernay to have a role in this offense. I would. Overall, do we like what Jacksonville did with their offseason?
No.
No.
No, they needed a big offseason, and they didn't have one.
What's the only thing that they did that you like?
I mean,
Drafting Brian Thomas,
Yeah.
it's not enough, though.
What
And
about
then
free agency?
there's really nothing that stands out.
retaining Allen and Alcoon obviously were huge.
Those are good deals for both those guys. I mean, Eric Armstead, but that
lot of
almost
money.
didn't happen too. Eric Armstead was released out of nowhere. If you guys remember,
Cap,
the Niners he was a cap casualty,
Yep.
and there's a reason he was a casualty. And he really wasn't that impactful on that Niners D line last year.
Last year.
But
Yeah.
I don't know. I guess you could say Armstead. I didn't
Almost,
love this.
it's almost like he knew it was coming.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know.
Real quick before we move on to Indianapolis, shout out to my dad in the chat. He also agrees with longtime friend of the show, Dan Alhosny, that you do need to bring the shades back.
Okay.
The Colts started off the offseason with a bang, announcing that Jim Irsay pretty much died and went into heart failure, and then they had to bring him back to life. But he is still kicking, fermented in Chivas.
When I did a deep dive on what's going on with Irsay, like the latest updates, I didn't realize that his daughter is first in command after him. She's got some bullshit title, but she's the heir apparent, and she's really well liked amongst Colts fans. So, third generation there.
Will Irsay make it through
Neither.
the year? That's the question.
They're going to need her.
Big free agent signing for the Colts. Big. One that Uncle Sam, I'm sure, is going to be an absolute massive fan of. A move heard around the world. They signed quarterback Joe Flacco.
They needed some stability at that position, and that's what he brings.
Who would you rather have, Gardner Minshew or Joe Flacco?
Flacco.
They did lose quarterback Gardner Minshew and replaced him with Joe Flacco. I, for one, there's no way in the world you're going to sell me on the fact that bringing in Joe Flacco is a better move than keeping Minshew.
I'll say this much.
He brings stability at the position.
I appreciate what Flacco did last year, and he's on track with the stability at the position thing. in a perfect world, Anthony Richardson reels it in a little bit this year and doesn't put himself in position to die. But in the event that he doesn't, it's inevitable that he's going to spend some time injured this year. And Flacco's a good little get to come in to back him up, in my opinion.
I'm so sick of Joe Flacco. I swear to God, he needs to go off into the sunset. Their big move, longtime wide receiver Michael Pittman, tagged and signed 3 years, $70 million. One, I think they got a pretty good deal on him.
Yeah, it's not bad at all. It's cheap.
2, he's been there forever. 3, I think he just works in that offense so well that it was a no-brainer to keep him there. Is he a true number one at this point?
He's
In
close.
your guys' eyes?
I think so.
I think he's a
close to it.
1.5.
He's close to it. They may have drafted the true number one.
I think that they did. They also extended cornerback Kenny Moore 3 years, $30 million. Honestly, not a bad deal for him either. Some guys that they re-signed. Safety Justin Blackman. That was a big one for that secondary. Grover Stewart, as well as defensive end Tyquan Lewis. Out of those guys that
Jair Franklin.
I was getting there.
Oh, I don't.
Out of all of those guys on the defensive side of the ball they kept, I think the most important one was linebacker Jair Franklin, 3 years, $31 million. Pretty much an identical deal to the Alcoon deal that Jacksonville signed. That's a big impact keeping him there.
Yeah.
Who was there before? Shaq Leonard. He essentially ran Shaq Leonard out of a job. Well, CTE did as well. But
That is.
you want to talk about another tackling machine, just like Alcoon? Massive signing, in my opinion. Besides their draft, guys that they signed, do we like it so far? And held on to?
Well, you got to re-sign some of your own to be effective.
Yeah.
This is how you start building your team to have depth.
A lot
gotta
of
have
it
depth.
it was just housekeeping. A lot of this,
Yeah.
a lot of their, other than the draft, it was. I think they went into the draft thinking that's where we're going to get better. Is we're going to do some damage in the draft, and that's when we're going to get our pieces that make us better. But this was good housekeeping, and again, like pending how Anthony Richardson is, they're going to be one of those teams if he has a big year that's going to be thinking next year we need to win now. And they set the market on some of these deals, and that could be very beneficial for them going forward. So that can make them aggressive next year if they're a team that can contend with Anthony Richardson.
100%. And along with retaining Grover Stewart, they also brought in defensive tackle Raekwon Davis.
Those two were really solid for them on the inside last year. This is why Zaire Franklin's running around all over the place making tackles.
Yeah, between Buckner, Davis, and Stewart, that's a really nice middle there. Like we said, they lost Minshew. Zach Moss also gone now at running back. With Jonathan Taylor stuff getting figured out last year, that was probably a smart move on their part. Isaiah McKenzie, wide receiver, gone, and also defensive end Jake Martin. But I do agree with what both of you said. This team got better through their draft. And they were the first ones to take a defensive player at pick 15, I believe. And that was Latu, defensive lineman out of UCLA. You guys both spoke very highly of him in the pre-draft process. Why is he a good fit for Indianapolis?
I've said it before. If you're going strictly by numbers, and if you're strictly going by last year's numbers, he was the most efficient defensive end or edge rusher in college football last year. He was very good. The question on him was his medicals. It's all checked out. And I was watching their draft call with him. I was watching that "Hey Rookie, welcome to the league" thing that ESPN does. And his was cool, and he was excited. He's excited to play for them, and I think he's a good fit there. And they just picked up the fifth-year option on Kwity Paye from Michigan, who they drafted 4 years ago. So that's a good little tandem there at DN to keep them going for, in the near future. And I think that, again, they need to add more pieces on their defense eventually. But I love their draft. I think their draft but they had one of the best day twos out of any team in the league.
To finish off day one, to start off day two, they went with wide receiver Adonai Mitchell out of Texas. I believe this is who you were referring to when you said they may have drafted their number one.
Yeah.
What do you guys both think of him?
Go ahead, Uncle Sam.
He's a solid player. This is a guy that
He was one of your favorite receivers.
NFL ready.
You had first round on him.
NFL ready.
He fell because of character concerns. It was fucking bullshit. Supposedly, like, someone leaked that when his blood sugar gets low, he's really hard to deal with. So he's fucking hangry. He fell in the draft because he's hangry. Are we serious? Are we fucking serious? So Chris Ballard, the Colts
He should be
GM,
drafted higher if he's angry.
yeah. Chris Ballard, the Colts GM, actually came out and he was like, listen, that's bullshit. We tear these kids down. He had a really great comment on it, a really good quote. You guys should watch if you can. He goes, we tear these kids down all the time over little stuff like this. And, you know, it makes their lives hard as it is. It's really stupid. So I thought he was a steal. He was first-round talent. I don't know if he was as good as the 4 receivers that went in front of him. I would have had him wide receiver in the vicinity
I thought
where
he was the best wide receiver at Texas.
Yeah, oh, for sure. Better, Worthy, and I'm sure you've seen you guys saw the clip of Worthy dropping balls at rookie minicamp, right?
I did see that, yeah.
I don't think it matters much right now, but for sure, Worthy's things, his speed is why you drafted him. A.D. Mitchell's he's the X wide receiver. He's going to play on the outside. You can get the ball to him downfield. He could jump up and grab it. And he's a big loss Quinn Ewers lost 2 receivers this year in Worthy and Mitchell. But Mitchell, in my opinion, was the better of the 2. I'd put him receiver 7 in this draft class. Perfect compliment to Michael Pittman, though. Perfect compliment.
In the third round, they went offensive line, tried to protect Anthony Richardson. They went with Matt Gonclaves, Pittsburgh offensive lineman. I feel like Gronk when I'm reading some of these names. I swear to God.
This was a really good pick. He was one of the there's a drop off in tackle after that major run of tackles that went in the first round. So then from there, I'd put Kingsley Suamatia just because he's a project. I think he's going to be better than most of the tackles in this draft. He'd be that tier 2, and then tier 3 started with Gonclaves, and he was outstanding at Pittsburgh for the last couple years, and a bit of a project, but a guy that could probably start for them, I don't know, next year. And then it gets better at the next one. Tanner Bortolini had one of the highest RAS scores out of all the offensive line prospects at the draft, and there's nothing to hate about Wisconsin offensive linemen. Can play 3 positions. He'll probably be their center, and if he doesn't start this year, he'll start for them going forward. He's a great leader, a great kid. He's Italian. He's one of us.
Isn't that brand of frozen dinners?
I think if you combine the 2 of them, if you combine Tanner Bortolini, then yes, it becomes the brand of frozen dinners.
Yeah, I've had a few Bortolini frozen dinners in my day, and they are delicious. In the 5th round, they went with another wide receiver, Anthony Gold out of Oregon State.
Yeah, he's a ball hawk. He's a guy there weren't a lot of drops for Gold. Similar. They went trial and error at wide receiver. It's one of those things they're going to throw darts at a wall, see what sticks.
Shout out to the short kings. Anthony Gold, 5'8", 171 pounds. Wish I was 171 pounds. Anyways,
Xavier Worthy, by the way, was like 160 something.
Are you serious?
Yeah, he's got to add
5'10".
It'll
Gonna
take
get
a while.
cracked in
Maybe
half.
He's got to
5'10".
add like 15 pounds at a minimum to play this year.
In this, they had a 2nd, 5th round pick. They went defensive back Jalen Charlies out of Missouri. Did I say his last name right?
Carlisle. That's a silent.
Oh. Wow.
There were 3 Missouri DBs that were drafted in this draft, which is so fucking impressive. Not to mention,
Very good last year.
it wasn't just their defense. All around, they had a really good team. I think they were up there in terms of teams drafting it, and it shows. If you go back and watch, they almost beat Georgia 2 years ago, and if you go back and watch the tape of that game, they brought Georgia, I think, into overtime. If not, they blew it in the 4th quarter. But it was Ennis Rakestraw, who's ours, who should have been a first-rounder. We stole him. Chris Abrams-Drain, I think, ended up going in the 3rd round, the other corner, and then Carlisle's. And he's a good player. I mean, this is another project, but he's a guy that fits, and, he could be pretty physical for Shane Steichen.
Actually, they went 4 defensive backs 4 secondary guys in a row, which is interesting. Jalen Simpson, safety out of Auburn. Micah Abraham, corner out of Marshall, and then went back and finished their draft with Jonah Laulu, Oklahoma defensive lineman in the 7th round. Overall, I think it's a pretty damn good draft, don't
Yeah,
you?
I thought they had a good draft.
I didn't think it was bad at all.
They're
They
all
lost a lot of. I'll tell you what, they lost some key guys that they had last year, and they were able to replace those guys in free agency. That's huge. It's very important.
I would go as far at a minimum. We're talking about the division today. They for sure are the best draft in the division.
over Houston.
Tennessee for me was second. I
Really?
like what Houston did.
Yeah.
They didn't have a first rounder though, and that Houston's damage came in free agency and via trade.
So first question, do we like the Colts offseason?
Yeah, 100%. Considering where they were last year, and then remember their biggest offseason addition is going to be getting Anthony Richardson back.
Right.
True. Now, obviously, we like the Colts offseason more so than Jacksonville's, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do we like it more than Houston's?
Didn't the Colts?
No,
They didn't finish in
did
front of
a better
Jacksonville.
job.
All around, if you're factoring in the trade that
Everything.
Houston made,
Whole
and you're
offseason.
factoring in, we still got to do the Titans too.
Correct.
If you're factoring in everything, yeah, because I think the monster free agent class, it's going to be beneficial for Houston, and they still like what they did in the draft. But this was by far and away the best draft in this division this year.
So Indy has the best draft. Houston has the best free agency moves so far. Let's finish it off and talk about Tennessee. Obviously, they fired Mike Vrabel. Pretty much cleaned house. Hired a new head coach in Brian Callahan. He was the offensive coordinator at Cincinnati. Uncle Sam is over here shaking his head, and he has not really liked this move from the beginning. Why?
I don't know. I just. It doesn't make any sense.
It's not sexy. Number
It's
one.
definitely not sexy.
And
But
then
it just doesn't make any.
I think I know what you're thinking.
you were a Vrabel guy.
If you're going to tear it down, and you tear it down all the way, I don't think he deserved to get fired. I don't think Mike Vrabel deserved to get fired. It's my opinion. I mean, I don't say you can lose your job and you're making the playoffs, and I don't get that. I don't understand that.
So, just on Brian Callahan, real quick, we don't associate him with the Bengals. Like we weren't thinking like this is the reason Joe Burrow lit it up in year 2. This is the
Right.
reason the Bengals were a playoff team. We weren't thinking that with Brian Callahan. More so, who's the D coordinator? Lou Anarumo, the fucking bastard. He almost got the Cardinal job. He almost got the Cardinals head
Yeah.
coach. That I attribute their defense making crazy improvements to him. And Zach Taylor's got a great mind and is a good play caller. So we weren't really thinking Brian Callahan when we were thinking the Bengals, but the Titans liked him enough to where it made sense. And I think he's got one of the better staffs, Brian Callahan, out of all the rookie quarterbacks. I think he built a pretty good staff. He brought over his father, Bill Callahan, the offensive line coach.
Yeah,
so
that's not much.
You're really low on this head coach sign.
I'm just not a Callahan guy.
it's
I
one of the
remember-
worst.
I remember his dad. His dad was dog shit.
It's for sure one of the
not
bottom
gonna
2
sugarcoat it.
head coaching signings in my
No,
bottom 3.
it's not. It's not that, dude. I hate seeing guys regurgitated year after year after year. I'd like to see some of these newer guys come up.
Well, he wasn't a head coach before, Brian Callahan. It's not. He
No,
was just a coordinator.
no, his father was, and he's not good.
Obviously, new head coach means new coordinator. So
Correct.
Nick Holes, offensive coordinator, Denard Wilson, defensive coordinator. Free agency moves. Well, trades. We'll start off with trades. L'Jarius Sneed and a 7th rounder in exchange for a 2025 third and their 7th from this year's draft. L'Jarius Sneed, obviously the guy in the Chiefs secondary. How do we feel about him coming in?
We'll see if he can duplicate that. I mean, going to basically a rival, and we'll see what happens. I mean, I don't know. He's going to be in a different system, and we'll see what happens.
Hypothetically, corner is a position where you can plug someone in and play, and
Yeah.
you don't have to learn as much because your job is just to cover the receivers. So hypothetically, he should do well, but we'll see. I mean, he was in a pretty good system in Kansas City that generated pressure. So if the pressure works, if you're Justin Simmons is ticking and their D line is ticking well and their linebackers play well, this could be a good signing. A part of me wonders, and I'm spitballing, and I'm probably reaching like crazy here because he's a good player, and a lot of teams inquired about him. The Colts were the leading candidate in the clubhouse for the longest time on L'Jarius Sneed.
Yes, they were.
A part of me wonders if they one of the factors in making this move was just to pry him away so the Colts couldn't get him. But they gave him the money. I think they gave Sneed, if I remember correct, did they sign him? You might have to. I didn't put it in here, but did they pay Sneed the contract
Yeah,
that he was looking for?
I believe they did, yes.
So that's half
He
the
got
battle
tore
there.
off.
I will double check that and bring up 76.4 million, 55 million guaranteed on a 4-year deal.
Fuck, that's a lot of money.
That was a lot of money.
But honestly, good for them. They got a number 1 corner, and if you look at the depth chart for the Titans, I will say they were lacking pretty bad right there. I mean, last year, their number 1 and 2 corners were Roger McCreary, and that's pretty much it. I mean, there wasn't that much there. Exactly.
Well, they upgraded that position just in free agency alone.
Correct. They also upgraded at wide receiver. Like we talked about earlier, they brought in former Jags receiver Calvin Ridley on a 4-year, $92 million deal. And also another Jaguar receiver who we talked about earlier. They worked out Zay Jones this week, but no contract has been offered as of yet. So possibly bringing in 2 receivers from a team in the division there. They also signed a running back in Tony Pollard, 3 years, $24 million, after losing King Henry himself.
I think the whole point. So I think Tajee Sharp's going to end up being the lead back there.
I do too.
And Pollard,
Probably.
it's going to look good for Pollard because his load's going to be lessened than what it was in Dallas. And I think both of these offensive pieces between Pollard, and then I thought this was a great fit for Ridley. I think this is actually a decent fit
Same
for
here.
Ridley.
I agree.
It reminds me of when he used to play with Julio Jones. So you have DeAndre Hopkins as the Julio
Correct.
Jones.
Yep.
And he's the complement, and he doesn't need the pressure of being wide receiver 1. And if their offseason was geared towards making Will Levis, seeing what they have in Will Levis, this was good. And I actually like Will Levis, too. I think he's going to be great. I love what I saw from him the back half of the year. And they've upgraded a lot of areas to where I just like where they're sitting. I think they're sitting in a good spot after free agency.
Yeah, so after free agency, I mean, the receivers are Ridley, Hopkins, and Treylon Burks is your third guy. That's not all that bad. And
See, this is what helps Ridley too, is he doesn't have to be
the guy.
He was never the guy in Atlanta, and he produced massively when he was just the other guy, and that's where he's at his best.
And
Then
then,
it's good for Hopkins, too.
Yeah,
oh yeah, it takes pressure off of DeAndre Hopkins and Ridley, and they can hopefully coexist together in that offense. The 2-headed monster of Tony Pollard and Tajay Spears,
the Spears kid is.
I mean,
Yeah.
again, another guy who works better as a complementary than a bell cow is Tony Pollard.
Right.
So if him and Spears can figure out that dynamic and they can utilize both of them, we've seen Tony Pollard as the complement isn't all that bad. I like both of those moves so far. They also signed center Lloyd Cushenberry, 4 years, $50 million. Cheeto Awuzie, corner, 3 years, $25.5 million. How do we feel about both of those deals?
They needed that.
Awuzie could be a pretty good number 2. He
Correct.
could look good next to L'Jarius Sneed.
Yep. Cushenberry, they need him on that line.
Some depth moves. They went out and got Mason Rudolph as a backup quarterback. So their quarterback room now is Will Levis. Mason Rudolph is actually number 2, and Malik Willis is number 3.
Yep. When are they going to make Malik Willis a running back or a receiver or something?
A super back.
The super back. When are they going to make him a super back?
The Kenneth Murray signing at linebacker. He is currently
like
listed
that.
as number 1 on the depth chart. And I like that
I
too.
like that. They needed somebody to replace Al Shahir.
Absolutely. And that was my next point. Obviously, losing him is a pretty big loss for them.
That was huge for them because he was like the heart and soul. of it.
He was.
outside their defensive line. He was the guy.
100%. And Danico Autry.
Yeah, that's my preferred
That's
defensive.
a big loss for them as well, because him, Simmons, Harold Land, they that was kind of the heart of that defense there, and I thought that was a big loss there as well.
They did a good job of replacing
Murphy Bunting.
replacing Danico Autry, and I mean it's a interior guy, but in the draft, I think we'll get to it in a second.
Yeah,
Murphy Bunting's another big loss, but again, they did enough.
the
at corner.
Awuzie, yeah, I feel like that was a good move for them to replace him. They also held on to defensive tackle Sebastian Joseph Day, who I know Uncle Sam's a big fan of.
He's a pressure guy.
You've always liked him. And they also
Pressure guy.
re-signed kicker Nick Folk.
I like Folk.
I wanted the Lions to sign Nick Folk.
I did too.
He's a good player, but I have a theory on the Lions and what they're going to do at kicker. We'll get to it next week or whenever that is when we talk about the Lions.
With the 7th overall pick in the draft, they went out and got J.C. Latham out of Alabama. The pick was a little bit questioned because there were a lot of other offensive linemen there. Do we think that they got the right guy? Should they have went for somebody else? Do we think he works in this system?
He needs a little bit of development, but what the biggest pro on Latham is there were 3 or 4 offensive linemen that went in the first round that they could play anywhere. They could play 4 out of the 5 positions.
They were versatile.
And he's probably, I think they drafted him as a guard, to be honest with you. That being said, he could play tackle for them eventually if he wanted to.
He is
He's
on the
best
depth chart as the starting left tackle, right?
left tackle. I mean,
They re-signed. They signed that Cleveland Brown tackle Leroy Watson.
they might have traded for Leroy
They
Watson.
trade for him.
Yeah.
Oh, they
Regardless.
did. 7th round pick to Cleveland for him.
Regardless,
So that
no.
upgrades their offensive line right there.
I think Latham's a fit. One of their biggest problems last year was they were getting sacked left and right, no matter who the quarterback was. Tannehill died. Eventually, Levis got crushed as well, and it cost them games. Like getting sacked at the end of games literally cost them games. So I thought this was a great pick. Their draft was okay. They had a quality draft here, in my opinion.
You know, I wanted to ask, do we think Ryan Tannehill ends up anywhere? Or is that one over for him?
I don't know.
I didn't even put him on the departure list. That's how I feel about him. That was also just an error. It's just being an excuse right now, but
Their 2nd round pick, they went defensive line and got Tavondre Sweat out of Texas.
yeah, great.
Massive dude.
Great player. Another guy that was knocked for some reason. He may have had a criminal issue.
6'5", 372.
See what his issue was. There was an issue with
He's a
him.
huge man.
They had 2 really good interior defensive linemen in Byron Murphy and Tavondre Sweat. Tavondre Sweat, if in the proper situation, could be just as good as Murphy does. And I'll tell you what, it's going to help having Justin Simmons play next to him as well. Am I making that up?
Tavondre Sweat was arrested a month ago on a DWI.
Okay.
Par for the course. Welcome to the NFL.
That's it. That's it.
They did not have a 3rd rounder
Okay. No,
because they ended up trading it. But in the 4th round, they took linebacker Cedric Gray out of North Carolina. And then moved on to the 5th round and got Javaris Brownlee, defensive back out of Louisville.
Yeah, Brownlee's actually pretty good, and Louisville had a serviceable defense over the last 2 years.
We talked about him in our pre-draft.
I think the Lions may have brought him in for a
they
day
did.
3
They brought
candidate,
him in for
a day
workout.
3 workout.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that he was on. That's a good get for them. Same drill. That there was a lot of trial and error, and you're trying to develop talent and see who you could plug in and play. And some of these guys that we haven't talked about in the third, day 3 picks, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th rounds, like they're very impactful players off the rip, and it's just a matter of how they develop.
These are the guys
We'll
that
see.
develop your team.
That's where
They
your team's
are.
built.
They're the ones that complete the team.
Back half of the draft.
Right.
And then in the 6th round, Jaquan Jackson, Tulane wide receiver.
I don't know much about him.
I'm not gonna sink my teeth into him.
Pick
This guy I do know here.
242, safety James Williams out of Miami of Florida.
Didn't Miami have another safety too that got drafted?
Yeah.
Can't remember his name.
This is the second guy.
Yeah.
This guy here is like 6'4". He's your prototypical. He's like Cam Chancellor. But, I mean, that kind of safety doesn't really do it anymore in this league. But it is what it is. Guys, he can play. Play at the U, you can play.
Yeah, you've always been a big U fan. And then with their last pick, 252, they went Jalen Harrell, Michigan defensive end.
I think Harrell might have been the last Michigan player to get drafted, too. Harrell was excellent in Ann Arbor. Says a lot about him that he was a 7th-round pick. But he was good. He wasn't as productive as Junior Colson. A lot of Michigan's pressure came from the interior because they rotated their linebackers and they did a lot of sub packages, like NASCAR package type deal with their DNs. And again, developmental. He's got to marinate a little bit, but he's of course a good player and he comes from good defensive line stock too. So,
okay. So now we break down Tennessee. Well, they had some losses, but overall, did we like what they did in free agency?
I thought they had a decent pro personnel gathering season.
Now to their draft.
Yeah, I mean,
Middle of the road?
No,
Better
I
than
don't
middle
think
of
so.
the road?
They're the combo of the Colts and the Texans. The Texans had the best free agency. The Colts had the best draft. They're the combo. And we're gonna see. I don't love what they did with Brian Callahan either. I thought they could have found someone better, but they're gonna go as Will Levis does, and we're gonna see how good Will Levis is. And if not, they get to the drawing board next year. And I think this is like a fact finding off season for them. I think this is we're gonna see what they're gonna have type deal.
I agree.
So we discussed 4 teams, all from the same division. Let's rank the off seasons, okay? Let's go through here and see who we thought came out on top. I think we can all agree Jacksonville's the bottom, right?
Yeah.
Jacksonville's at the bottom. Can we all agree on who's at the top?
Are we Houston? Houston a big off season?
I think it's Houston.
I think Houston's at the top. So now,
I think the Colts are right behind them.
between the Colts, whose draft everybody loved, and the Titans, who we thought were above average in both departments, who do we think made themselves better this offseason between the Titans and the Colts?
I think the Colts.
It might be unfair because I'm factoring in last year, but just factoring in last year, the Colts weren't far off, and they were a very competitive team, and were doing more with less. And I think the Colts made some pretty stout. I mean, they took care of their own guys, and then I thought they had a good draft to the point where I think the Colts are closer than the Titans are at the moment. Just because there's a big question. There's really a question at quarterback for both of them, but the Colts were able to plug in Gardner Minshew last year and win some games.
Right.
So Anthony Richardson just has to live up to the hype a little bit, whereas Will Levis is
got a lot of proof.
You got to show me something.
And they got stability now. If Richardson does go down again, they have stability with Flacco. They do. You say what you want to say, and it's a lot. You're not going to throw anything at Flacco that he's going to be confused by.
You can't deny what Flacco did with a pretty shitty Cleveland and banged up Cleveland offense last year.
Banged up.
You can't deny it. I'm sorry. I don't disagree with you. Like, if you want to be sick of it, that's okay.
Top 3 pack in the league.
But I would feel
one.
okay if I saw Anthony Richard go down again, and I know that Flacco was the one that's waiting, especially with these receivers. You throw in A.D. Mitchell and Pittman.
Yeah.
Flacco hasn't had pass catchers like that in a while. He certainly didn't last year in Cleveland. He had what? He had
Cooper.
He didn't even do anything. No, who's the tight? He didn't
Dog
Njoku.
shit.
And Njoku was his go-to, who was excellent.
Joku and that the kid till he got hurt. Kid they got from the Jets. Eccles.
Eccles.
What
What
was
the
his name?
fuck are
What was
you
that kid's
talking
name?
about?
I don't
The kid
remember.
they got from the Jets.
Who are you talking about?
I'm talking about the Browns.
What position?
He's a wide
Receiver.
receiver, asshole.
I don't know. Oh, you mean Elijah Moore?
I'm sorry, Elijah.
Ackles?
I don't know why. I
What
said
the
Eccles.
fuck are you talking? So can we put it this way? Houston number 1, 2A Indy, 2B Tennessee, and 3 and the bottom
No, 4.
Jacksonville. 4 is Jacksonville. I think that's probably a good way to put it. When do we get to rip apart the Browns?
That would be Friday.
Friday we get to rip. Good. I'd like to end the week ripping apart the Browns because I want nothing but bad things for the Cleveland Browns, Deshaun Watson, the ghost of Joe Flacco. I can't wait. I want to see I want to see them finish in fourth.
And I finished the preliminary research on the Browns, and they
didn't do dick.
Just previewing. They had the you could put lipstick on the pig type offseason. You guys like Jerry Jeudy.
You can smear Jerry Jeudy on the pig, but it's still Jerry Jeudy.
Jerry Jeudy.
Anyways.
It's still shit Brown. The best thing the Browns did this offseason, we'll talk about it Friday, is the white face mask. Looks really fucking good.
We'll talk about it on Friday. Will you bark for us on Friday?
No.
Okay. Do you guys have anything to add before we end today's show?
Sorry for leaning back and being out of the picture just
That's
now.
okay. It's all right.
God
Pop in,
bless
pop
Joe
out.
Flacco.
Fuck Joe Flacco.
I have nothing to add. I'm
God
going to watch
bless
my Knicks
Joe
tonight.
Flacco.
Are you?
Listen, Madison Square Garden yesterday had Game 1 Rangers Hurricanes. Tonight it has Game 1 Knicks Pacers. And then it alternates the rest of the week. And it's the same in Boston, which fuck Boston. Fuck the Bruins. They have, I think, tonight Game 1 at Boston Garden, Bruins Panthers. And then tomorrow is Game 1 Celtics Cavs. And that alternates going forward as well. Good time to be in those towns.
Basketball, one thing I will say, I am so glad that LeBron James got his asshole punched and sent home. I was so happy.
And then got his
about
coach
that.
fired.
Me three.
So happy about that. How that guy got fired is beyond me.
Darvin Ham.
Yes.
It's the third time a LeBron coach has ever been fired with a
Yes.
winning record.
What was that one dude's name in Cleveland that he got fucking fired?
With the glasses.
David Blatt or Mike Brown.
Mike
Mike
Brown.
Brown.
Who's a great coach.
Yeah.
Good coach.
Yeah.
man. And
Mike
this-
Brown's
this
the
fucking
Kings
clown.
coach now.
And shout out to the owners of the NBA teams. Every one of you idiots that fucking think LeBron James is the greatest player of all time. He's dog shit. Okay? Dog shit.
Is it petrified?
Amen.
He's fucking dog shit.
That's something Uncle
He-
Sam and I
he's-
agree on.
He is the most
Leon says he can't hear
Overrated.
you. You need to talk into the mic.
over fucking rated player I've ever seen. The guy takes days off when he doesn't feel like playing. He fucking flops worse than fucking soccer players do.
Worse than a soggy
He's
dick.
fucking horrible, dude.
President Baker
Horrible.
President Baker in the chat.
Horrible.
Longtime friend of the show. President Baker in the chat is telling you to stop hating on the king.
No, I'm fucking telling you, dude. The guy is horrible. He's a fucking cancer to basketball.
He's the king of taking China
He's a
down
fucking
the throat.
cancer to basketball.
Anyways. Anything else to add?
I'm sorry.
Anything else to add?
God bless Joe Flacco.
Bruce, anything from you?
Nah.
Zolo. Well, then thank you guys so much for listening to another episode of the Tip Balls Podcast. Make sure to follow our socials, Instagram and Twitter at Tip Balls, TikTok at Tip Balls Podcast. Come back on Wednesday when we recap the AFC East offseason. It will be a good one.
It's a doozy.
And if you're listening to us on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, make sure to watch us on YouTube, subscribe, and ring the bell so you get notified when we go live Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, right around 5. Thank you so much for listening. Shout out to Tip Softball. We got a big game tomorrow night. Going to pick up another W. Thanks again. You guys will see us on Wednesday.